She was born in 1905 in Tokyo, a woman called Sada Abe, one of 8 children in a family of tatami mat makers. Life was never easy for her. When she was just 14, something terrible happened. She was assaulted. That moment left a mark she carried for years. By her late teens, she had drifted through parts of Tokyo's nightlife, serving, dancing, perhaps prostituting. But she also worked as a waitress, tried to make something of herself. Then came a man named Kichizo Ishida, a restaurant owner. Sada and Ishida became involved in an affair. It was intense, complicated, and it pulled her into a world of deep emotion. Over time, jealousy grew. Sada became obsessed, afraid that Ishida might slip away, afraid of losing him to others. She acted out in small ways at first: warnings, possessive behavior, emotional conflict. But then, things took a darker turn. On May 18, 1936, Ishida was asleep. In a moment, Sada later described as feeling like a release, she used her sash, which she often wore, to strangle him. She said afterwards she felt a burden lift from her shoulders. After Ishida died, Sada stayed by his side for hours. She then did something that shocked all of Japan. She took steps that no one expected. She severed his private parts and carried them with her, wrapped carefully. She also used his blood in ways she later said were meant as messages, marks she wanted to leave behind. For 3 days, she was missing. The public was captivated. Newspapers exploded with the story. People called it the Abe Sada Panic, because everyone was talking about her. She met with a former lover, she wrote letters, she lived in hiding, all while the nation watched in horror and fascination. Eventually, she was found and arrested on May 20th, 1936. The trial drew massive crowds. Sada stood in court and made statements that surprised many. That she had loved Ishida in a way she felt no one else ever had. That jealousy had consumed her. She was convicted of both murder and abuse of a corpse, but not given the life sentence some expected. Instead, she got 6 years in prison. Despite the prosecutors seeking of a harsher punishment, and despite her own claim that she preferred the death penalty. Her sentence was eventually commuted, and she was released after 5 years. In the years after, her story became legend. Books, films, art. It raised deep questions about love and obsession, about mental health, about how desire and fear can cross lines no one anticipates. What she did remains shocking, but many people also wonder what inner conflicts led her there. Sada Abe lived out her remaining years out of the spotlight. Some say she felt regret. Others say she remained distant. But the story of that May night and the aftermath echoes still. There was a woman called Nina Housden, about 33 years old in 1944, living in Michigan. A truck driver during war times, someone who didn't always fit neatly into society's boxes, but no one saw what was coming. Her husband, Charles Housden, was a cross-country bus driver. They lived separate lives at times, and tension had built up between them. Friends and neighbors said Charles had boasted publicly about relationships with other women. For Nina, each brag felt like salt on a wound. One day, she confronted him. They argued. Then things turned tragic. Nina strangled Charles, across the street from a police station. She claimed it was out of anger, out of hurt she could no longer contain. But that wasn't where it ended. Nina placed Charles's body in the trunk of her car. She drove toward St. Louis, with the body in pieces. Somewhere along the way, her car broke down near Toledo, Ohio. Exhausted and perhaps panicked, Nina was spotted. And that's how she was stopped. When investigators looked in the car, they found the body dismembered. The law at the time called it a horrifying crime. Nina did not deny much. She admitted to having stayed with the trunk over 48 hours, keeping vigil. During questioning, she said Charles's behavior, his extramarital talk, his treatment of her, had pushed her over a line she couldn't cross back. She said this act was one she had planned to some degree. She had prepared, borrowed tools, thought about what she'd do. She was arrested, tried for first-degree murder. A jury found her guilty, and she was sentenced to life in prison in Michigan. The crime became one of the more notorious domestic murder cases during that period. Even after the verdict, the case left many with uneasy questions. How much did society's norms about honor and shame play into Nina's decisions? Could she have got help before things escalated? Did the law understand her pain, her buildup of resentment and fear? The crime was shocking, not only because of the acts, but because it revealed how betrayal, humiliation, and hurt can build quietly, until someone and something snaps. Lan Anh was just 20 years old in 2010. She lived in Citrus Heights, California. Her life was complex: young love, intense emotions, and moments of vulnerability. She had been raised among many siblings by parents who came as refugees from Vietnam. Their home was crowded, the expectations high, and the comforts few. Drugs and disputes touched her past. But nothing predicted what she would do in the early hours of March 13, 2010. A woman named Monica Ann Anderson, age 26, was her lover. Their relationship had been on and off, passionate and volatile. Monica was older, confident, perhaps a guiding force in Lan Anh's life. But jealousy and anger, fueled by substances and bad nights, had begun to erode trust between them. On the night of the tragedy, both had been drinking vodka and using cocaine. Arguments flared over small things: a cell phone charger, accusations, heated words, small pieces of tension, until they broke. Monica tried to leave the argument that night. She fled their apartment. Lan Anh followed her. What happened after was terrible. Lan Anh grabbed a knife. She stabbed Monica, not once, not a few times, but many times, 91 times. She struck her back, arms, neck, chest. It was a moment of rage, a moment when control slipped completely. The next morning, the police came. Lan Anh didn't run away. She was arrested that same day. In her statement, she nodded to remorse. She said she had loved Monica. She said she lost control. She said she regretted what she had done and hoped someday to be forgiven. Monica's family sat in court, grief etched in their faces. Her mother, her friends, facing the unthinkable. A life full of memories, now wrecked. In 2012, at age 22, Lan Anh stood trial. The defense painted a picture of a young woman under pressure. Jealousy, drugs, emotional turmoil. They said this was not a cold, planned crime, but a passionate explosion of grief and hurt. The prosecution, however, emphasized the number of stabs, the chase, the decision to follow her lover after Monica fled. The evidence was strong. On October 5, 2012, the judge sentenced Lan Anh to 25 years to life in prison after a jury found her guilty of first-degree murder. The maximum sentence. In court, the judge addressed Monica's family directly. He said he could not imagine their pain. He apologized for what they were going through. Lan Anh's apology, read in court, was quiet. She asked for forgiveness. She told the court she was sorry. The case left many unsettled questions. How much of this was rage and jealousy? How much was an accumulation of emotional wounds, of love gone wrong? Was there any way to intervene earlier? For Monica's family, the loss was more than legal. It was personal. For Lan Anh, the sentence was part punishment, part consequence. But every day she's behind bars, the memory of that night follows.